After 2025, the training entered a new layer. Lights, resonance, and dreams grew more complex, testing whether humanity could sustain steadiness beyond the familiar thresholds. Before we begin, write in the comments where you're watching from and what you believe about extraterrestrial contact. By 2025, the circles had practiced for nearly 3 decades. The rituals were clear: arrive early, check the environment, regulate breath, widen attention, write before speaking, care before theorizing. The sequence was so embedded that newcomers could learn it in an evening, yet mastery required a lifetime. What once felt like preparation had become daily discipline, and the discipline was shaping lives as much as it was shaping encounters. Phenomena did not escalate towards spectacle but deepened in refinement. The same familiar preludes appeared: the hush of insects, the hum through bones, the metallic tang on the tongue, the sweep of warmth across the skin. But their timing became sharper, as if the curriculum had reached the point where precision mattered more than novelty. Logs compared across regions showed increasingly similar durations and geometries, as though the same lesson was being taught simultaneously in different classrooms. Dreams, too, shifted from broad coaching to targeted drills. People wrote of being corrected in subtle ways, a hand gesture showing how to lengthen the exhale at the precise moment of surprise, a luminous presence adjusting their stance by inches so balance held under pressure, a sequence of symbols that pulsed like chords until the body matched the rhythm. These were not revelations about destiny. They were refinements of posture and presence, aimed at producing nervous systems that could hold the extraordinary without collapse. Families noticed side effects that rippled beyond the practice. Parents who had learned to regulate breath found themselves calmer with children. Children who had learned to describe clouds without embellishment grew fluent in describing their feelings without drama. Partners found conflicts resolving faster, workplaces noticed quieter confidence, and communities benefited from citizens trained to listen before interpreting. A pivotal night in mid-2025 illustrated the shift. A group had gathered under a thin crescent moon. As the insects hushed, 3 points appeared low on the horizon, formed a triangle, and held steady for nearly 20 minutes, far longer than most sequences of the past decade. Rather than erupting into chatter, the circle leaned into stillness. Breaths slowed, notes were written, and no one reached for devices in the first crucial minutes. Later, logs revealed precise alignment, headings within predictable variation, durations nearly identical, sensations consistent across participants. The event was not dramatic to outsiders, but to those present it was confirmation that the curriculum had entered a stage where refinement and duration mattered more than surprise. By year's end, participants realized that repetition itself had become the lesson. They no longer expected novelty each night. They expected the opportunity to practice capacity again, in familiar ways, until it became second nature. The training had entered a new layer, one where refinement mattered more than spectacle. In 2026, resonance sessions gained a new complexity. Circles across continents began experimenting with layered rhythms of breath, short sequences followed by long exhalations, timed precisely with watches synchronized to the second. The effect, participants said, was a deepening of shared presence, a sense that the group itself was becoming a single instrument. The skies seemed to respond with equal complexity. Logs described not just triangles or single points, but sequences, 3 lights forming, collapsing into one, splitting again into 2 that orbited before merging back. Across distance, independent groups recorded nearly identical sequences within minutes of each other. The events did not prove anything in the conventional sense, but they offered something more important to those involved: coherence across vast spaces, as though humanity were learning to play in tune with an intelligence that valued structure over spectacle. Dreams echoed the theme of complexity. People wrote of layered sounds, harmonies rather than single tones, that guided their breath. They described standing in circular halls where symbols pulsed not individually but in interwoven sequences, teaching them to maintain steadiness through multiple pressures at once. The lesson was clear: the curriculum was no longer about single responses. It was about sustaining composure under layered conditions. And you? Have you ever faced moments where challenges came not one at a time but all at once? How did you stay steady? Share your story in the comments. others might find strength in it. Physical sensations during encounters grew more nuanced too. Participants noted alternating waves of warmth and coolness, subtle shifts in balance, as if the ground tilted beneath them, and sequences of pressure behind the eyes that pulsed in rhythm with lights above. These sensations were logged with precision, adding to a lexicon that now spanned decades. Circles also matured in care practices. After complex nights, guides encouraged not just water and food but extended periods of silence, allowing impressions to settle before words took form. They modeled how to resist the pull of premature interpretation, teaching participants that patience in debrief was as important as patience under the stars. By the close of 2026, participants reflected that the training had entered orchestration. The unknown was no longer presenting single notes. It was presenting chords. Humanity was being asked to hold harmony, not just tone. The years 2027 and 2028 marked an expansion of sensitivity within the network. Circles began noticing phenomena not only in the sky but in the subtle textures of the environment: unusual stillness in animals, faint vibrations in the ground, sudden clarity in distant sounds. Logs revealed that these details often coincided with the familiar preludes: hush, hum, warmth, metallic tang, suggesting that the phenomena engaged the environment more deeply than before. Dreams reinforced this heightened sensitivity. Participants described being guided to notice micro-shifts in their own bodies: the exact moment the tongue pressed too hard against the roof of the mouth, the subtle clenching of toes in surprise, the narrowing of vision under pressure. Presences in these dreams corrected such details with patient gestures, teaching participants to release tension at its smallest spark. Humanity was being trained to sense at finer scales, to refine awareness until steadiness could be maintained under even subtler stresses. Resonance sessions expanded too. Groups experimented with synchronizing not just breath but subtle movements, gentle swaying, coordinated steps, or simple postures held at exact minutes. Logs suggested that during these sessions, phenomena often displayed corresponding patterns: lights swaying, beams descending in rhythm, or points tracing arcs that mirrored human movements. Whether coincidence or orchestration, the coherence reinforced the sense that the training was becoming increasingly interactive. Quick pause. Do you think humanity is already being guided quietly, not through grand revelations but through subtle adjustments in perception? Leave your thoughts in the comments and follow the channel for more reflections. Families reported that this refinement carried into ordinary life. Children learned to notice small shifts in their emotions before they grew into storms. Adults became more sensitive to subtle changes in tone, posture, or silence during conversations, leading to gentler relationships. Communities benefited from members who could feel tension rising before conflict erupted. The training was shaping not just encounters but human culture itself. Auditing also matured further. Teams compared logs across regions with extraordinary precision, noting not just times and geometries but micro-descriptions of sensations. Over time, a library of patterns emerged, cataloging not only the external phenomena but the internal states that accompanied them. This dual record suggested that contact was not simply about what appeared in the sky. It was about what humanity became inside while witnessing it. By the end of 2028, participants understood that sensitivity itself was part of the curriculum. The unknown was not teaching humans to chase spectacle. It was teaching them to refine awareness until steadiness could be sustained at the smallest scales. Humanity was being trained to notice, and in noticing, to change. As 2029 unfolded, the network reflected on what decades of practice had produced. The legacy was not proof of visitors but proof of humanity's own capacity. People had learned to breathe through fear, to log with honesty, to care for each other when adrenaline surged, and to carry those skills into families and communities. The training had become a form of cultural inheritance, passed quietly across generations. Phenomena continued with steady consistency. Lights appeared in coordinated sequences across continents, often during resonance sessions, reinforcing the sense of orchestration. Dreams delivered tutorials in balance, posture, and breath, refining nervous systems into instruments of steadiness. The preludes, the hush, the hum, the warmth, the metallic tang, remained faithful companions, reminding participants that the curriculum was ongoing. What struck many was how the ethic of anonymity had preserved the work. Without leaders, there were no scandals. Without maps, there were no sites to exploit. Without names, there were no heroes to worship. The culture had grown strong by refusing the spotlight, focusing instead on the ordinary work of showing up, breathing, writing, and caring. This refusal had become its shield, protecting the practice from distortion. Participants also realized that the training had reshaped their relationship to death, fear, and meaning itself. Fear of mortality softened. Anxiety over uncertainty diminished. Confidence grew, not the confidence of knowing answers, but the confidence of knowing how to remain steady when answers are absent. This shift rippled into daily life, making communities calmer and more humane. By the early 2030s, reflections carried a quiet consensus. If open contact never arrived, the practice had still been worth it. It had produced steadier citizens, gentler families, and more resilient communities. If contact did arrive, humanity would be better prepared to meet it without collapse. Either outcome was success. Participants often wrote a simple phrase at the end of their logs: capacity over proof. It had become the motto of the culture, a distillation of decades of lessons. Proof could be argued with, denied, or forgotten. Capacity endured. What do you think matters more, proof of contact, or the capacity to meet it without fear? Leave your thoughts below, and let's build the conversation together. The story of 2025 and beyond was not one of dramatic revelations. It was one of disciplined practice, ordinary kindness, and steady refinement. Humanity had not been given closure. It had been given training. And that training had turned anonymous circles into a living legacy. People who could meet the unknown with calm, humility, and care. If this story caught your attention, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with those who are also fascinated by UFOs. And leave your thoughts in the comments. What do you think really happened?